Welcome to the Apple a Day podcast. My name is Michelle Apples. If you don't know me, I am the founder of the Christian Singles Hub, a space where Christian singles can be equipped with the resources they need to grow towards greatness, put their faith in action, and to date with purpose. Healthy relationships only come from healthy individuals. So join me every Wednesday as we interview some incredible guests and give you all the wisdom you need to steward your singleness better. We hope you enjoy the show, and don't forget to check out our website at thechristiansingleshub.com. Welcome to another episode of An Apple a Day. I'm Michelle Apples, your host, and we're back for part 2 of our podcast, our 2 Really Better Than One. We had so many questions come in. We didn't get to them on the last episode, and the last episode ended up being like over an hour long because we were just talking a lot about our story and our adventure. If you don't know, this is my husband.
Hi, I'm Douglas.
He's Douglas.
Yeah.
And so we thought we'd come on here for a part 2 of our 2 Truly Better Than One. And we have some great questions that we're going to answer that you have all submitted. So, you ready for this?
I'm ready.
All right, you're going to be put on the hot seat a lot
Oh, boy.
tonight. Okay, so question number 1. Are you guys close in age?
Oh, yeah, we are.
Kind of.
Kinda.
I mean, yeah, we are, but
Yeah.
how old are you?
I'm 33.
And I'm 34, so I'm actually older than him,
Mm.
which is crazy because actually, I remember literally the day I met him, I was praying that morning and I was like, God, would you just reveal to me who my spouse is or like something about my spouse? And I truly felt God saying, like, he'd be younger than you. And I was like, weird. I mean, I've never really had like too much of a preference, but I'd always kind of seen myself with an older man. So
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Here's a question for you. And I think that you mentioned some of it on the last episode, but how did your hubby know that you were the one?
Oh, that's such a good question. Um, yeah, I think it was like a sort of like events that kept compiling on one another. So it wasn't like there was one moment, but it wasn't like all of a sudden this like aha moment where I'm in love and like this is it. It was just a lot of peace throughout the whole thing. Like from day one, there was just something different. It wasn't serious in a way of like an interview, but you could tell that there was some weight to it. Like I remember walking into the date and I was like, "Oh, like this is a date." Like like it was more than just like yeah, it had some
Like,
weight to it.
it's like wasn't dating as a sport,
Yeah,
I
it,
think,
it was like dating as in like I really want to get to know you and see if, see what's here. So it was just kind of one thing that led to another, and pretty soon we just started spending so much time with one another. And as a lot of you know, like we got married very like it was fast. Um, but the one time, I guess I'll answer the question because I like to ramble, and Michelle tells me this all the time.
Mhm.
But to answer the question, so Michelle's walking through just a back injury, and I remember picking her up, and I picked her up, and I said, and I could just tell something was wrong, like immediately. You know, when you look at someone and that you've known, and you're just like, man, there's something that like something was off. And so I asked her, I said, is everything okay? And she said, my back is really hurting. And I said, well, like, what's the pain level? And if anybody knows Michelle, she is extremely strong.
Mhm.
Like, she'll just put it away and put it aside, and we're going to go do the thing. And she said an 8 out of 10. And that is like, probably for the normal person, that's probably like, what, like
12 out
a
of
12
10.
out of 10. Yeah, like way over a 10 out of 10. And I was like, okay, well, we don't need to go. So we were going to our church, has a every Thursday night they feed the homeless. And so I was like, well, we don't need to go. Like there's plenty of volunteers. Like let's just stay here. Like I'll go get you some things that you need and we'll just have a night in, hang out. She's like, no, we're gonna go. Like we gotta go. And I was like, okay. Like, and this was early on in the relationship too. So I was like, okay, that's cool. Like we're going. So we got there, and it just was like it's you could just tell it was bothering her so badly, and to a point where she finally was like seeing stars
Oh
basically,
yeah,
like was
it
about
like
to faint.
blacked out. I was like, I need to sit down because I'm about to fall over.
Yeah, and so I just like basically got her a chair and got her water and got down on my knees and was just like looking at her and keeping her like basically conscious, and was like, it's okay, like breathe. And it was events following that, like basically we left and went back to her place and just really like took care of her, but it wasn't like it was just an instinct. There was nothing like, "Oh, should I do this? Should I not do this?" It was just like an immediate like, I need to love on her because there was just something more in my heart where this wasn't just like my friend anymore. This is somebody that was really hurting and really needed somebody to be there for her. And so, yeah, just walking through that moment, I was like, wow, like I really care about this woman. And there's just something more there. So it was just another, I guess, green light, you could say, that was like, wow, like I really enjoy, yeah, the good times and the bad. Like,
Mhm.
you want to be there for somebody, and it's not all going to be great.
Mhm.
But when you have another person that you can come together with and support one another when, one's up and one's down, like that's what you do. You pick each other up. So,
Yeah, I love that. And I love that moment because in that moment, I got to really see your character and just how you served me in that moment. That it wasn't like, oh, okay, this is your problem to deal with, but this was really like, this is our
our problem.
problem and
Yeah.
we're going to deal with it. And like, I'm going to be there for you, regardless. And I think that's so important to look for in a spouse is someone who won't just be there during the good times. I mean, we have a lot of good times. Like, we have so much fun. We
Yeah.
laugh a lot. We have so much joy. We were literally just shooting hoops and playing, trying to play pickleball and laughing our heads off, and that's amazing. But
Yeah.
life isn't always going to be like that. Like I
Mhm.
remember one of the key moments for me in our relationship was so I was going through an immigration process, dealing with this back injury, and it's just been a hard couple years of navigating that. And obviously, before we got married, I was in, I was going through an immigration process. I couldn't get insurance in the U.S., so I was dealing with back pain, and I didn't really know what to do. And not just back pain that like, oh, my back is sore, but back pain where literally some days it was hard to get out of bed, and it's still it's
Mm.
hard to get out of bed. And there was one moment where I just had a meltdown and I just was on my knees. We had a prayer closet. So I went in this prayer closet. I was just on my knees crying. And like in that moment, he just came up behind me and just wrapped his arms around me and just was there for me. And I think like those were the moments. These were like the key moments to be like, wow, this person isn't just going to be there for the good, but this person is also going to be there for the bad. Like, and vice versa. I mean, there was times where you were upset or navigating something and it was just like, hey, how can I support you? How can I be there? How can I be a rock for you in this moment? And I think that's why you have to be in a relationship and spend enough time with someone so that you don't just see the goods. It's like, yes, our relationship was a short-lived time. Like it wasn't, a long time, but we actually went through stuff together. And so I was able to see his
Mhm.
character. He was able to see my character, knowing that, like, hey, when we get to marriage and things do get hard, it's
Yeah.
not a one against the other or one person here for themselves. It's like, hey, we're a team and we're going to navigate it and figure it out. And I think those are the important things to look for when you're dating someone is like, are they just going to run when things get hard? Or are they
Mhm.
going to just, I think back, it was even not too long ago when we were in New York, I got really sick and I was sick for 4 days in bed and you had a friend in town and I was like, well, go and see your friend, like, whatever. And you were like, no, there's no way I'm leaving your side when you're this sick. And it brought me back to a different relationship I was in probably a decade ago where the opposite happened. Like I was sick at home and he was like, okay, I'm gonna go and like hang out with my buddies now. Like,
Mhm.
I guess I'll see you later. And it was just like this lack of care. And so it's like you see those things and you get to test those things in their character when you spend enough time together and actually go through things. And I think that's the important thing. Like I used to have the rule of like needing to know someone for a full year before I got engaged, but that didn't happen in our relationship, but I think it was still like enough time because we spent so much time together and I was compressed that I got to see those moments.
Mhm.
And I think those are crucial to know if a relationship is going somewhere, is because when you get into a marriage, like life is not just easy. Like, it's like people, yeah, I mean, I'm sure you can attest like hard moments in your life. Like now add someone else to the mix and like how they're going to respond to it and how they're going to
Mm.
handle things or how they're going to handle your stress or things under pressure or bad things happening, and are you going to be able to flow together to really work as a partnership to navigate it? And so I think, yeah, those were moments that were just so crucial in our relationship to be able to see the character of each other.
Yeah.
All right, next question. Was it hard to transition into marriage?
You want me to answer?
Yeah, and then
Okay.
I'll answer.
Okay. Um, no, I don't think it was. And the reason why I say that is because our marriage is built on Christ. It's like it's not about me and Michelle. It's about God and two people coming together to really serve him. And so throughout our whole relationship, it was truly two people partnering together to live out what he was calling us to do. And it's like you have your best friend, you have a person that's going to do anything for you. And so when you start that early, you like I think our relationship wasn't like it was so like mature from
Mhm.
very early on because we both and we talk about this all the time about doing the work. Like we both came into the relationship very healthy and like we had done the work. So it was two mature people who are
Then the work
healthy,
individually, yeah.
yeah, coming together. And now it's like, okay, perfect. Like let's figure this out and see if this is going to work. And
Mhm.
truly that's what we did. We compressed a bunch of time together, spent a ton of time together and really got to know one another. So by the time we were like walking into marriage, it was like, well, we've already been doing this. Like
Yes
obviously,
and no. Like, now you're in a covenant, so it's different. It's not just dating anymore.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was like we yeah, I don't know, that best way to say it, it was a very mature relationship that didn't need like it wasn't like we stepped into marriage and then had to work on a bunch of things.
Yeah, we weren't unprepared. Like we had asked all the questions. We had navigated all the things like that were needed to be navigated. I mean, we had talked about finances. I feel like we did this like preparing for marriage book that our pastors recommended before we got married. And like we went through that book and the book like we kind of laughed at each other after being like, we talked about everything
Yeah.
in this book. Like none of that book was like new news to us.
Mhm.
And so I think that book actually confirmed to us like, okay, we're ready for this. We're ready to walk into marriage because we've already done all of this. We already know all of this. And
Mhm.
we were talking to a couple that our pastors had set us up to like counsel us into marriage, and they were like, that's rare. Like, and we are talking to them about that. Like, do people really not talk about this stuff before
Yeah.
they get married? That's crazy to us,
Mhm.
And so it's like I feel like, when you talk about engagement, it's like the preparation to like walk into marriage, and like the
Yeah.
preparation had already been done in dating. Like we asked the hard questions, we talked about the hard conversations. Like
Mhm.
we talked about finances, which people don't often talk about. We talked about, sexual history. What did that look like? Like, and different things like battles that we had to go through and victories that we won and
Mhm.
testimonies and yeah, so I think like when we walked into marriage, it was like all that stuff had already been brought to the surface. There
Yeah.
was nothing like hidden under the surface that had to come out to light in marriage. I mean,
Yeah.
there's definitely like at the same time, it's like you're walking into marriage, like there's always challenge with transition and change. Like, I'd say it was smooth for the most part, but
Mhm.
there's things like, I'm such an independent person. And so walking to marriage, like one of the conversations we had in early stage, I was like, I think it's going to be really hard to join our finances together.
Mm.
And he was like, well, why is that? Let's talk about it. And we talked about it. And I'm like, I think I've just been so independent and I've had to work so hard for so long because I never had a backup plan. I never had anything to fall back on.
Mm.
So now to just attach to someone else like almost feels like I'm losing that independence a little bit. And so we had to navigate that and talk through that. And so yeah, I think there was like challenges in just like the, oh, I'm not just me anymore and I can't just rely on myself. Like there is someone else that I have to consider his feelings, and I can't just do things without considering his feelings and do things independent anymore. And I think there's change, like there's transition with that. And as I wouldn't call it hard, like I wouldn't call the transition from dating and relationship into marriage like wasn't hard for us, but I would say that with any sort of change or transition, it is going to be like those growing pains
Mhm.
that like come from growth.
Yeah.
And so, there were just like moments that I'm like, okay, like this is challenging, but at the same time, I wouldn't call it hard. It was a
No.
beautiful transition that was necessary in order to grow into this next season.
So good.
All right, next one. What are some things you miss about being single?
Oh.
That's a good question.
That is a really good question. I think the one thing that you don't realize is like just your alone time.
Hmm.
Like, and we talk about this
I
quite a
think
bit.
it's also different. We're living in an RV
Yeah.
and you cannot be alone. Like,
Yeah.
I literally cannot go into a separate room and be like, I'm just gonna go spend some time alone.
Yeah.
There's only one room in the house, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Um, where was I going with that? Yeah, I think it's the like spending time with the Lord, and like we both talked about that, like you were saying during COVID, just how much time you just spent with
Hmm.
the Lord and like hours and hours. And I think it's when you're single, you don't realize
The
like
time
the
you have.
time that you have until you get married or you have a significant other, and then or you're even walking into marriage, and then it's like, oh, but like now I have this other person.
Hmm.
And that's not to say that we don't do our own things or we don't have our own time to
It's
read,
just
or
different now.
it's just different. Yeah, and it's like you have another person that you have to check with, and like, hey, I'd like to do this, is that
Hmm.
okay, like what do you think? So it's like, yeah, and I don't think miss it. It's just different. It's a
Yeah.
different a way of doing things.
Yeah, I want to say I agree with that. That's definitely something I miss. And obviously, like our relationship and our marriage looks a lot different than most people because most people aren't living in an RV on the road full time, like on mission for Jesus, right?
3
So
months after they got married.
literally, and like our life has been literally a whirlwind since we got married. Like we haven't stopped.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think that I'm speaking from a place that's very different. Whereas, like, obviously, if you're just like in like a new house, like you can again go to a different room or like
Yeah.
you get to go to work every day and to an office and like you're not with your spouse, but like we're together all the time. We work in the same place, we eat in
Mhm.
the same place, we sleep in the same place. Like it's a lot, and I love that and I enjoy that. But yeah, I think there's something different about the time commitment where, before and when I was single, like I didn't have to think about, oh, I have to make time for my spouse,
Yeah.
or oh, we actually need to schedule quality time together because I'm running a business right now and we're traveling and like we want to see things and do things, and like the busyness doesn't mean that we have quality time. Like,
Yeah.
it's like when I'm hosting events and retreats, and people are like, "Hey, do you want to do events back to back weekends when you're in Orlando?" I'm like, "No, because I have to take care of my marriage and I have to take care of my husband. And one of the weekends it's his birthday, and that's important." And
Yeah.
typically in my single season, I'll be like, "Yeah, absolutely, let's go." And so it's like I have to consider those things and I have to think about those things. Or like,
That's it.
how am I taking care of my husband today, and how am I serving him, and how am I going above for and beyond for him? And I'm also trying to run a business, and we're also traveling full time, and we're also trying to maintain contact with our friends and family, and we're also trying to do this and
Mhm.
make sure we're spiritually growing, and like what does this look like, and so there's like a lot of moving parts. Whereas like when I was single, and I think to even back when I first came to Nashville and moved to Nashville, like I was just single, run my business, and it was awesome. And like, got to hang out with all my friends, and it was awesome. And I got to just go and travel where I wanted to, when I wanted to, and it was
Mhm.
awesome. And you can't do that when obviously you're married. And so yeah, I think just the balance of it all definitely changes things. And again, it's that growing pains of like it's a good season, and it's a great season, and like this new time together is amazing,
Mm.
but it also doesn't take away from the fact that like it looks different than my single season did. And that quality time that you just had with all the other aspects of your life doesn't look the same anymore. So
Yeah, I think one other thing to add to that is like it's so good having a spouse. At least I mean I love it because it helps me grow. Like when you have somebody that you're with 24/7 hours a
oh,
day, they're going to see your flaws. They're going to see things that
oh,
you need to work on. And so
but the key is to communicate them.
that's what I was just gonna say. Yeah, is like communication is key in everything. I mean, you talk to like couples that have been married for 50 years, what are they gonna say? Communicate. That is and so I think it's been so amazing, like walking into this and having that because like when you're just by yourself, you run around and do everything. Like you're not really leading another person. You're just going
Mhm.
doing your own thing. But now you have someone to lead and to, like you
Someone
can't
that
just go
keeps you
take a nap at
accountability.
12 o'clock when you're supposed to be working or whatever it may be. It's like you have to lead um so
And
yeah,
lead by
and lead
example,
by
yeah.
example, yeah.
Yeah, it's so true. And there's been a lot of conversations that we've had of like, hey, this is an area of our life that since we got married, it's now lacking. Well, it can't happen. So we need to change it and adjust it. And
Yeah.
like it's great because he is the type of man that takes feedback, and he truly like changes and grows from it. Whereas I think that's been so beautiful about our relationship is that we both are very like acceptable to feedback from each other, and we know it's not coming from an angry place or like a spiteful place. It's just like, hey, this is an area we can grow in, and we want to see our relationship continue to grow and not decline. We don't want to like come together and end up worse than we
Yeah.
were. We want to come together, and actually because we're together, we're actually growing and becoming better, not only as a couple but also as individuals. And
Yeah.
so we're doing constant check-ins and just making sure like, hey, like every Sunday we're making goals for the next week of like, hey, where do we fall short this week? What does that look like? Have we been lacking in our time with Jesus? Okay, we got to step it up. Have we been lacking with our morning routines? Yeah, maybe we need to step it up. Or like our physical activity or our emotional health or our marriage. Like what have we done for our marriage this week? And so yeah, I think really like being that growth minded has been awesome. We're totally off subject.
Yeah, we are, but it's okay.
It's okay. What does your ideal weekend look like now versus when you were single?
In an RV, traveling across the country. You know what? Like, I think about this trip that we're on, and it's like you could think of it in two different ways. You could think of it as a way of like, okay, we're gonna go do all this, and it could be crazy, or you can really think about it like this is gonna be an adventure, a once in a lifetime adventure that we get to spend with one another. And
Mhm.
so I think weekends before, like, I don't think a lot has really like changed per se. I think it's just now I get to do them with my best friend. And
Mm,
I'm very like Michelle is very independent where she'll just go do things on her own and like she
mhm.
loves that. I'm very much where I want someone to like go do those things with and enjoy them and like hey like like that's just how that's who I am. That's how I'm wired. And so for me, like it's amazing because we're both outdoor people. We can go hiking and we can go do all the
Mhm.
things and like she even will fish once in a while. So,
Not sure about that.
but yeah, we just love enjoying each other's company and I think it's so fun when you get to do it with your best friend. So, I would say not a lot has changed. It's just like now I get to do it with the person I love.
Yeah, I think again going back to like we're not a typical couple that just are like living in the same place, same town that we met in. And so yeah, weekends look very different now because obviously I can't just go call up my friend and say, "Hey, let's go hang out." Or I can't just go do the familiar. It's like, we're in a new place almost every weekend. So it's really, yeah, like you said, just like, hey, let's go explore together. Let's go see new things and meet new
Mhm.
people, and that's so much fun. But yeah, I think it's just look different because we don't have the convenience of being able to call people up to go hang out with, and so
Yeah.
it is just like me and him and I, and and that's awesome in this season.
Mhm.
I think like if we were to constantly do this forever, it could get lonely, like
Yeah.
as much as we have each other. Like you need other
Other people.
people and you need community, and like he needs his male friends and I need
Mhm.
my female friends and we need our couple friends and we need you know the people that we care about in our
Yeah.
life, and so I think like this is great that we're doing this for a year and we love it, and
Mhm.
but I think that there is something to be said about there is an element of loneliness when you're on the road because you don't have the convenience of just going to hang out with our people.
Yeah.
And it's going to be great that we're hosting events all over and we get to meet so many people,
Mhm.
but there's also just a different level of friendship when you have like your people around you that know you, that you've had hard conversations with,
Mhm.
you've been vulnerable around. Like, there's a different depth to that friendship
Yeah.
than just hosting an event for lots of people that you barely know.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, looking forward to seeing some friends on the road and stuff while we're here. But that's definitely an element that's changed when it comes to weekends.
Yeah.
Okay, what's the most common misconception that people assume about marriage that isn't true? That's a good question.
Yeah, I think culture, pop culture, media, like you hear the words ball and chain. You hear the words like, oh, like literally I hear like marriage is such a bad thing. Like so many people make it out to be this like, oh, you get married and you're tied down or your
I don't
wife.
think singles think that though.
Well, okay.
But I think married people that have been a long time, or like secular married people, or like people that are not having thriving relationships, probably feel that way.
Sure. I mean, that's the one thing like that I can think of. Like when you said that, I'm like, oh yeah, like marriage is amazing. I was talking to a guy at work today, like online, and he recently just got married. And I asked him, I was like, how was everything going? Like, and I didn't even ask him how married life was, and he's like, marriage is the best thing ever. And he goes, I bet, and he goes, I don't even tell you that because you already know that it is. And
Yeah.
it's so cool because it is like when you find the person that you're supposed to be with, it is the best thing in the world because
Yeah.
you just fight for one another and you go through hard things together. And
Hmm.
there's no one I'd rather be with to go through everything than my wife.
So
So
good. So true. So good. Yeah. And I think like you've even gotten texts being like, how's married life going so far? Like it's almost like people are expecting that
to
it's
be
not
bad.
going good, or
Yeah.
like, oh, how's traveling
With your
being
wife.
being married?
Yeah.
Like, what?
No, it's literally
I'm like,
so good.
this a lot of fun,
Yeah.
you know? Um, yeah, I think yeah, one misconception I think on my side of things is like we live in a culture where sex is so glorified
Mm.
and like so perverted and so everywhere, and it's wild because it's like, yes, obviously sex is important, like the Bible is clear that
Mhm.
between a husband and a wife like sex is important, but I think it's like 10% of our relationship. Would you
Mm,
agree?
100%. Yeah, I think so much pressure gets put on it that when in the grand scheme of things, like
Like it is
it's
definitely
very
it's
small percentage of
yes,
like
of what
of
a marriage
this.
is.
Yes.
And like to me, I'm like, it's not my favorite thing about marriage. Yet I
Mhm.
feel like so many people are rushing the altar because they want that. And
Yeah.
I'm like, but like it's gonna be a quick reality that like, ultimately like that's 10% of our relationship. Like
Mhm.
the other 90% is so much more like beautiful,
Yeah.
because it's like doing life with your best friend is like
Mm.
amazing. And like getting to work through hard things with the other person is amazing. And
Mhm.
like having that person like call you out on things and help you grow into like a person that is, better, is like amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, as a guy's perspective, I want you to share
Yeah, I
about
would.
that because I think it's not just my misconception. I mean, we've talked about this, and this is
Hmm.
something that you've said
Yeah.
before I ever even said it. So I
Yeah.
think like people need to hear from a man's point of view because especially like, so many women are just like, "Oh, men are only in it for that." And like, yeah, I want to hear from a man's point of view.
Yeah, I would say if you're if you're relying on sex to get you through your marriage or your relationship, you're going to fail 100%. Like
Mhm.
sex cannot get you through the hard times. And you hear about like makeup sex and all that, and it's like that that doesn't help. I mean, it's one
It's a
thing,
mess.
it's a mask. Like, and I'm here to tell you that it's like I've struggled in the past. I have struggles, and like I'm here to tell you that it does not. It's yeah, I don't know the right word to say, but it's like if you're banking on sex to be the one thing, like, or your significant other is super attractive and you can't wait to have sex with them, like you're going to be miserable because you're not connected on a relationship standpoint of like this is my best friend
Like
and I
we're
want to
spiritually connected, emotionally connected, like,
you want to fight
like
for them.
physical connection is only one part of a relationship. And like again, yes, that's important, but there's so many other ways to be connected
Mhm.
intimately with your spouse. Like we're so spiritually intimately connected. We're so emotionally intimately connected. And
Yeah.
I think those things like are way more important in the grand scheme of things. Like you
Mhm.
said, like, oh, someone's super attractive, I'm gonna marry them because I get to sleep with this person every night. Is like you're
No.
gonna fall short
Yeah.
because marriage is so much more than that. And
Hmm.
because you're gonna go through so many things. I just think like I heard this story once of this woman getting married, and like 2 weeks later, her husband was paralyzed.
Yeah.
And like could not even function in that area anymore.
Mm.
And it's like, what if that was to happen?
Yeah.
Would your relationship
Struggle.
survive?
Yeah.
Or would it be like that was the one thing and so this isn't actually surviving?
Yeah.
Like that's all I had and that was all the only thing I was connected through. So
Hmm.
now like what do we got left?
Yeah. Yeah, I heard a saying too. It was like you find your best friend and sex is just like that small little piece on top. Like it's like the added in bonus. It's,
Mhm.
that extra thing that you get to
It's
share
like
with
a
one another.
gift.
It's a gift. And that truly is way, like if you read the word, like it's a gift. Like that's why God says to wait for marriage, because it's a gift between a husband and a wife. Um, but yeah, there's just like there's so much more to life and to marriage than to focus on sex and that alone.
That's like the big end
Yeah.
all be
Yeah.
all.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, I think that's the point we're trying to make is like
Yeah.
it's not the end all be all. And so, for people, especially I think as Christians, because like we've been taught different things when it comes to sex
Mhm.
that have been misconceived or like yeah, I don't know. I think we've just been taught really poorly or not taught at all. And
Yeah.
so then it's like this is a thing we've never talked about, so I'm gonna highlight it and make it this like on this pedestal of my life, and like it's so strange. Yeah. Anyways,
Yeah. It's good though. It's a good conversation to have. It's
yeah,
so
I think
important.
it's important.
Yeah.
And honestly, if you guys have questions regarding it around it, please like
Mhm.
let us know. Like, yeah, we're happy to. We're pretty much open books,
Yeah.
so happy to answer your questions when it comes to sensitive topics that people don't really talk about.
Yeah.
How was adjusting to having in-laws and how is your relationship with them?
Oh, yeah, this is fun. I actually think this is really cool. So my in-laws came in actually a week prior to us getting married. So Michelle's mom and dad flew in and they actually spent time with us.
3 weeks.
Yeah, so they were here for a week and then we got married and then they were here for 2 weeks
Yeah.
after. And it was really just such a beautiful thing because I really got to know them and I think they really got to know me
Mhm.
even before we got married. And we had FaceTimed a little bit, but not much like leading up to us getting married. So with them being with us, we really got to just sit down and we had dinners out by the bonfire. We went and
Yeah.
did so many fun things with them. And, I think it was really helpful for me because they got to see my heart. Like they got to see the
Mm,
man that I was and the man that their daughter was marrying. And like I think, yeah, it would be hard to like just walk into something and be and them not to see my heart and not to see the man that
mhm,
I am because that's important to me. Like I want my in-laws to like me and see me for who I am and
mhm.
um yeah, so it was really cool, like, "Oh, these are my in-laws," and just saying that, like, I think it's pretty fun
Mm,
to say, and now we have a family chat in our phones, we for both of our sets of family, we do, and,
mhm.
we try to FaceTime them and stay in touch, and so, yeah, it's been really fun.
Yeah, I think too. I think my parents really enjoyed coming in that week early because, if they would have came in the same time as your parents, I think it would have been hard for them, to just like see me get married and not really know you
Mhm.
because that distraction of having your parents there, where when they came in early, I think it really allowed the time to develop getting to know you and then staying longer too. Because obviously we've spent a lot more time with your family than my
Yeah.
family, with my family being so far away. But yeah, and as far as mine, I was definitely nervous when I first met his parents, just because my last relationship I got in, it didn't end well because of the family. And so that was definitely a point of contention that I was like, I don't want to go through that again. That was a massive heartbreak, that was unnecessary. And so, yeah, going in, I definitely had more nerves than the average person, I think, because of my past experiences. I think I've had two past experiences where like mothers have been extremely mean, maybe three mean. And like, I was like, I just can't handle that anymore. And so I expressed that obviously before
Mhm.
we went, but I was able to meet his family actually quite early on, in our relationship. And yeah, I mean, they were so lovely, very overwhelming because they brought the whole town to meet me, but they were awesome and just like brought me in, and like his mom was just so sweet and so hospitable, and she's like, "What does Michelle like to drink? Does she like tea? Does she like coffee? Does she like this?" And yeah, just so sweet and so just like welcoming me into to get to know them. And then the next time I think we saw them was I guess the cabin?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, and the cabin was summer, which was also so great. And then we were able to spend actually a lot of time with them, after we got married because we were there for quite a long time.
Mhm.
And yeah, and they've just been awesome. And his dad is amazing and just loves very hard, even though he's like doesn't show it a lot. But when
Yeah.
he does show it, it's so beautiful. And like he's like, all I ask is that you don't lie to me and like everything will be great. And he's just like, like you're stuck with us now and your family. And like, it's just so sweet how welcoming they've been in. And his mom, she's like, I don't mind talking to my daughter. Last time we're on the phone,
Yeah.
like, I don't need to talk to you. I don't mind talking to my daughter. And like, yeah, they've just been so amazing and so welcoming
Mhm.
me in. And they threw us a big wedding party, and his sister-in-law and his brother, and just like, yeah, they've been very just accepting and very welcoming and very much like, we want to invest in you. And I
Mhm.
think that meant so much to me, that they like care enough to reach out, and they care enough to like make the effort. I think that's been huge. And we got to spend Christmas with them this year,
Mhm.
and just completely went above and beyond to just make sure I felt like I was part of the family as our first Christmas together. And yeah, couldn't be more thankful for such amazing in-laws. Honestly, couldn't have asked for better in-laws than his parents, his family. So okay, next one.
Okay.
Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Oh, well, I honestly, it's coming up on so February 12th was when we had our first date.
Which is wild. It hasn't even
Mm.
been a year yet.
Yeah.
What?
So honestly, to tell you where I'm gonna be in 5 years, I have no idea or where we're going to be. Like I think it's the one of the greatest things about following the Lord and just be open-handed to what He has because truly, like like this tour, like we said yes, and we've talked about this a lot. Like where do you think we'll end up? And we're, but we both are like, we have no idea because look at what God's done in
A year.
and not even a year. Like sit here and say 5 years from now where He's gonna put
Mhm.
us. Like, I hope in 5 years that we are an example, a godly marriage to so many people, and so many people find hope in seeing us because I think there is a lot of people that are hopeless and they don't think that it's out there.
Mm.
And I think that's always been my prayer is God bring me somebody that when we are married that people look at our marriage and say I want that. And
Mm.
that's always been a prayer of mine and I'll continue to pray it because I don't ever want to lose sight of like now that you're married, okay, now like we'll just do our thing. Um but yeah, I hope and pray that we're able to give back. We love to give back, we love to volunteer and my heart is just I just love loving on other people and seeing people just like wow, you mean like that's for me? And so, yeah, just to give and give abundantly, I think is
Mm.
just something that I pray for in 5 years. I pray that it comes a lot sooner than that, but
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, I think we already give and give
we
abundantly,
do.
but I think you want it on a larger
Yeah, I
scale.
do.
Yeah, I'd say for me, similar, where I don't know if I've ever been like, in 5 years, I'm going to be here because my life has been a whirlwind.
Mm,
Like the fact that everything that has happened in the past year has happened is just like one part of my life. My life has always rapidly changed. And I've never been just stuck on staying in one place. And like, if God calls me to stay in one place, I'll stay in one place. But I've always felt that I need to be mobile and just be ready and willing to go where he wants me to go. And
mm,
I love that about our relationship is we're both wired that way. And so yeah, I think that's exciting. It's like I just believe in 5 years he's gonna exceed every expectation we
mm.
ever had. I mean, I don't know if 5 years ago I'd have been like, oh, I'm gonna be here in 5 years. Like, no, not at all. Definitely
No.
not. And so yeah, I'm just really excited for that. Excited for God to just do whatever he wants to do and just live like you said, open-handedly. Like, God, where do you want us? What does that look like? You want us to fly here? Well, we'll fly here. You want us to be maybe here, you want us to stay put, we'll stay put. It doesn't really matter to us. and
Yeah.
and so yeah, I just hope that, yeah, like you said, making an impact and doing the Lord's work, and yeah, being generous. And yeah, I just hope that I always say, like, I just strive to be 1% more like Jesus every day. So I hope I just, you know be a image bearer, really
Mm,
continue to be that, and be that on a bigger scale. It's
hmm.
just, yeah, yeah, I just hope to be better than I am today. That's all I can really ask,
Day by day.
day by day.
Hmm.
Okay, a big one. Do you plan on having kids? The question of the
The biggest
day.
question.
We get this question a lot.
We do.
It's not even that we get this question. People just assume. They're like,
Yeah.
"Oh, you're married? Well, when you have kids, oh, well, you better enjoy this tour and this season because when you have kids, or oh, well, then, when you have kids." I'm like, why do people always assume, oh, you got married, so you're destined to have babies? Like, what? That's crazy to me. Crazy talking. Go.
Crazy talking.
Not
Yeah.
that we're against having kids. I
No.
just don't like that. Like, you don't know what people are walking through.
Yes.
And so it's like, especially like this day and age, where so many people are going through like fertility problems,
Mm,
and like you're literally just not having any like thought behind what you're saying. And I think that it needs to be more recognized that like that's not everybody's um like desire. And yeah, it's a lot of people's desire, and sometimes those desires like aren't fulfilled,
mhm,
or they have issues. And like, yes, you can wait on God for a promise, but like, if the end all be all is like you're gonna get married and just have kids, like you just don't know what you're gonna walk through in that.
mhm,
And so yeah, I just say be careful asking those questions or like assuming those things, because you just don't know people's struggles when it
mhm.
comes to that. I mean, it's happening so much. Like, the amount of people I know that struggle with infertility is on a whole different level than I've ever experienced.
Mhm.
Go on, anyways.
Um, yeah, so we so this kind of goes back to like early on in our relationship where we talked about everything. And I think one of the things that Michelle did, that she came to me and she asked me this question before I even heard what she was going to say. So I had no idea what her thoughts were, but she wanted to hear what my thoughts were. And I thought that was really neat because so often, like, people can tell you what they, like, I could have easily said what I wanted her to know because I found her attractive or I really enjoyed her and didn't want this one thing to, like, not, basically kill the relationship or whatever
Yeah,
have
and I
you.
think I've experienced that in the past as people just conform to what you want them to be rather than just be themselves. And so I kind of learned within dating of like ask the questions first so you receive an answer before you share yours, because
Mhm.
that was something I often found in dating was people just conform to what I wanted, what they thought I wanted rather than just being their authentic self.
Yeah. Um, so yeah, she asked me the question and she's like, "Do you want to have children? Like, what does that look like?" And my answer was, whatever God wants for me is what I want. Truthfully, one way or the other, it didn't really matter to me. I love children. We have two nieces that I
Mm.
absolutely adore. Like, they are the coolest little girls, and I love every time we get to spend with them. But I think so much pressure is put on, you get married and then you have to have children. And the question I would ask you is, why do you why do you want to have children? Like, are you
Mhm.
just doing it just because the world says, like, get together and get married and then reproduce? Or, like, what is the reasoning behind it? And I think as you grow older it changes because as we grow up, that's what we're told, or that's what you see. You get, and that's why people are so
Mhm.
quickly to ask, "Oh, when are you having kids?" Well,
Yeah.
where is that coming from? That's coming from culture saying that we get married and then we have kids. um so yeah, for me that was my answer. And, like, I've always kind of felt like, someday we may adopt, or I may, like, I kind of just felt that even before I knew Michelle. I was, there's just so many kids that are just, they
Mhm.
need love. They need to see love. And going on mission trips and just seeing the joy that children have. And
Mhm.
like, I've always been one to just love on people, and if I can love on a child that doesn't necessarily have a mom or dad, then that's something that you can step up to the plate and say, okay, like,
Mhm.
we got this. So yeah, I think that's my side of it.
Yeah, I think like for me, I've never had the desire to have children. Um, I think when I was younger, it was definitely rooted in fear because my mother was a single mother when I was growing up. My sisters were single mothers when they had children. And that was definitely like a fear of mine. But as I healed from that, I really truly still didn't have a desire to have children. Um and again, I'm like Douglas, where I love children. Like, I want to just be surrounded by like 10 children and go play with them and have fun. And like,
Yeah.
that's so much fun. And when we go to see his nieces, it's amazing. And growing up and getting to play with my nieces and nephews were amazing. And yeah, but I never had a desire to have my own children. And I think that that comes from somewhere. Like, I don't, the typical woman desires to have children. Like they're wired that way. And that was never a part of my wiring. I think people expect me to just like have children. They see how much I love children and they're like, "No, you'll have children one day." I'm like, "Well, at the end of the day, like I'm going to do whatever God tells me. If he
Mm,
changes that and like changes my heart posture to have children, then great, I'll have children." But so far that desire hasn't changed. But like Douglas said, I do have a desire to adopt children. I think that there's so many children out there
mm,
that do not have families, do not have homes, need someone to come in and love on them and love on them so hard. And I know that I
yeah.
have that love to give to a child, and that he does as well. But I don't know when that looks like or where that looks like or how
Mhm.
that looks like. But it's something that we're just, hey, if that's something that God, if that's what happens, then
Yeah.
amazing. And we would be super open to that. I've also had dreams of like being like an emergency foster care home where people like in emergency crisis situations could just come to our house and just drop children off, and I could love on them. And then when they get adopted, like send them to their new families. Like, I don't know, like
Yeah.
and that's not something I feel called to in this season, or really, I don't know if anytime soon. But really just open, God, what do you want? What do you want? I think that he has a mission for us right now. And I
Hmm.
think if we were to adopt or yeah, just go and have kids, like it would hinder what God is asking us to do right now. Like at the end of the day, kids are a lot of work and they can be a distraction because they're now your new priority. Just like getting married, Douglas became my priority. You
Mm.
have kids and kids become your priority. Well, the Lord is my priority and what he's calling me to do is my priority. And so I think that's most important to me is like where God wants me is where I'm going to be. I have nothing against like having kids, but I do think like the more I talk to people, the more I see that they're programmed to do things because they think that that's what they're supposed to do, rather than like, God, is this a desire that I have because you've given it to me? Or is this something that I'm putting pressure on myself about that I actually don't even like feel called to do this. I
Mhm.
actually feel called to like go and be in the mission field and go live in another country and serve
Mhm.
serve people. Or God, I feel called to start a business because people need to see more godly entrepreneurs and like kingdom minded businesses. And sorry, my dog is freaking out because he wants us to feed him. So if you hear this whining in the background and him freaking out, he was grabbing his bowls. I had to pick him up. Like, you know, the joys of being in an RV and a
Yeah.
podcast. Yeah, so that's my rant over. We got like two more questions. Um, first question of the two, was it a struggle financially to get married, and what did that look like coming together as one?
Um, so no, I wouldn't say it was a struggle financially. And the reason why I say that is because both of us stewarded our finances so well. We both are very good with finances and
Smart, yeah.
smart with the decisions that we make and where our money is. And um so when we both came together, we were propelled. We weren't going backwards, or like, oh, you have a bunch of student loan debt I got to pay off, or you have this credit card. Like, no, we were basically financially free, besides like a home. But other than that, like, we had nothing to pay off. So, yeah, I think that's just a word of encouragement of like, you know, God gives us things like for us to steward well, and
Yeah.
money is one of those things. And um, yeah, so I would say that financially we came together and we're better together than we were apart.
Yeah, I agree with that. That both of us were very smart and wise when it came to finances. And that made getting coming into marriage so much easier because we both yeah, we stewarded really well. And so when we came together, it was almost like both of us received an inheritance
Mm,
with joining together as one, which was really beautiful. Of course, like I mentioned before, like there was this independence that I struggle with when it came to finances. But yeah, for the most part, I think that yeah, I think you we were able to see each other's heart when it came to finances and generosity and what where our finances go and what does that actually look like. And yeah, I think like I know you were talking about like, I didn't have all the student debt or whatever. And
mhm,
I just want to give a word of encouragement that like it's okay to have some debt. Like you might be in a different
mhm,
season where you do have student debt, or you might be in a season where whatever that looks like, maybe you have medical debt, and
mhm.
don't let that deter you from thinking like, oh, I'm just not ready because I have debt and I need to
Yeah.
do all this. But know that like you're a steward, and really it's like looking at that fruit of a person, looking at um yeah, their heart posture when it comes to finances, because I think it's very different if someone say has student debt but they're working on it and they're stewarding them. Diesel, can you chill out? He really wants so much food. We already fed him. He's just a hungry little monster. Okay. Um, but yeah, I think it's different if like say you do have debt and you're like working to pay it off and you're
Mhm,
stewarding what you do have well, and able to steward that well. And I think that's different than someone who's in a ton of debt and they're just going and having shopping sprees and not stewarding their finances well. And then you get to attach to someone and now you're adopting their bad habits. I think it's the bad habits with the finances that you have to look at.
Good.
And so yeah, I just want to encourage you with that like you're never too far gone, but what are the habits around that? If it's like I'm in so much debt because I just like to go shopping and I think I deserve so much in life and I don't have the money to pay for it, but I'm going to pay for it anyways, like very different mindset than hey, I put myself through college, nobody's helping me here. I'm paying this off. I'm working hard. It takes some time. And so yeah, I think it's the heart posture. Also, my battery's gonna die. So let's quickly end this. How would you define a successful relationship?
Oh, two people coming together that are pushing each other closer to Christ. And just like communicate, communicate, communicate. You can't, like, if there's something on your heart, there's a lot of times where I'm like, babe, I'm thinking this and this is super silly, but I'm gonna say it anyway. And I think if you can get in those habits of like just telling each other what's on your heart, and even if it's small little things that you don't think are a big deal, like don't let them grow into a big deal. Get
Yeah,
them out and
things become big things.
yeah, then talk about it. And I think if you can be two mature people who truly are on mission and have a relationship with the Lord, you come together and God truly brings people together that are ready to be together. And it's just so evident when I met Michelle and now we're married, and it's like, wow, like this is all God. This is not this. There's no way this would ever happen without Him.
Yeah.
So
Not leaving those hidden things there, because that's what the enemy wants is you just to hide those little things that are, bothering you instead of just putting them out in the open and just dealing with them. So good. Thank you for being on today. Thank you for being on today's
Thanks.
podcast. Thanks for listening in. You guys are awesome. Check out the Christian Singles Hub. .com for all the things going on. We're currently on a USA tour going around the whole US. It's been awesome, so much fun, and we have a lot of more stops to go to. So we can't wait to see you on the road. And stay tuned for the next episode of An Apple a Day podcast. Thanks so much for tuning in to another episode of An Apple a Day. If you liked today's episode, why don't you go like it, share it, subscribe, maybe even send it to a friend, and don't forget to review us. It helps so much. We look forward to seeing you next week, same time, same place on An Apple a Day podcast.